Hello everyone. Welcome to the 5th week of Psychology of Adolescence. So far we think about adolescence related to the biological changes and cognitive changes. And last week we begin to talk about identity issues. That is a major developmental task of adolescence. Related to the identity, when you think about who you are, there are very important aspect of yourself, which is gender. As a woman or as a man, what do you think about yourself? And do you think that you are kind of average man or average woman? And when you think of that, what's the criteria when you say that I'm a typical man and typical woman, something like that? So there are the different ways to classify or categorize of the people to understand. And gender, actually, that is one of the major classification criteria of human beings. So we're going to think about gender. Specifically, when we think of the gender, what is the biological and social cognitive influences of gender? And then there is a certain stereotypes and what man has to be, should be, and what woman should be, or what women should behave in certain ways. That kind of issues, we are going to think about that. And also gender similarities and differences. That is a long-lasting debate of psychology, gender psychology. So we are going to talk about some research findings on that issues. Gender role classification. Because in old days, people just assume that, oh, men and women are different biologically. But in these days, people feel that as human beings, we are more similar. So when we say that the gender, masculinity, and the femininity, that is a personality type. So gender role classification, it's not biological classification, it's more personality-wise. And then we're going to think of the developmental changes and junctures related to the gender issues. Firstly, the gender by definition, it's compared to sex. It's a gender, it's not just about the biological, the physical differences between two groups of the people. Gender refers to psychological and social cultural dimension of being male or female. So when you say that I'm the female, that including some of the assumption, psychologically and socio-culturally, how I should be differently, behave or think and feel compared to the male. So that is the differences. And sex is just the biological differences of being the male and female. And another, the concept is very important, is a gender role. That is a set of expectations that prescribe how female and male should think, act, and feel. So even though you are not aware of your own gender role, but you have a certain expectation of the man and woman, and if somebody behave or act and feel against your expectation, so that is against your gender role expectation, probably you feel uncomfortable. So that is another important concept we needed to understand. First, I want to start with the biological influences on gender, because I already talked about when we say that gender, there is the psychological dimension and a social cultural dimension. Start with the biological dimension. So in chapter 2, we thought about the pubertal changes, and that's the biological determinants are pretty much hormonal changes and also our growth spurt and the sexual maturation. That is all about our puberty changes. And one of the major, the pubertal change was the sexual hormone issues. So men increase the androgen hormones, and for women, estrogens, that is sexual hormones. So to understand the male and female differences and biologically, some people say that because of those hormonal differences between men and women, that is the basis of gender. That is one aspect. And another, the people propose the biological influences on gender is a psychodynamic approach, the classical psychodynamic approach, including Freud and Erik Erikson. And what they say that anatomy, meaning that our the body has our destiny. So they believe that the sexual organs of the man, that's determined certain male characteristics and the sexual organs of the woman having a womb that is a determinant of the characteristics of the woman, and it cannot be changed socially and culturally. So that's their belief, and this is they argue for the biological influences on gender. And another area and another part of psychology is evolutionary psychology. They also propose the biological influences on gender because they feel that the role of gender, it's given because the people has to survive in our worlds. So the survival of the fittest, meaning that to survive in this world, woman has to take care of certain rules like reproduction of the babies. And also for the man to survive in this world has to be physically strong in that way to protect the genes and their offsprings. So they explain that the gender role is not the socially ascribed or socially given, it's more biologically determined to survive in the world. And it's a kind of not intentionally we take it, but it's a given things. So these are three major explanations to support biological influences on gender. But also we know that there's some social important influences on gender. So this particular theory, social cognitive theory, support the idea of social influences on gender. And they propose that observation and imitation of other people's. So just observe how men behave or how the women's behave, and they imitate those behavior. That is the basis of our gender behavior. And also there is some reinforcement and punishment of a certain behavior. For example, the young girl, the female, wanted to always wear the jeans and the pants, then maybe the mothers don't like it and give us some kind of punishment. It's not really punishment, but it's give us some negative feedback on wearing the pants or short hairstyle and saying that it's not appropriate for girls. In that way, socially, certain behavior can be considered appropriate for man or for male. So social cognitive theory emphasized the role of reinforcement and also at the same time observations, influences to shape the certain behavior. So when we say that the social influences, parental influences is a major one, and also siblings, just observing how my brother behave and my sister behavior, and that's a big influences. And also peers influences, also schools and teachers give a compliment to certain behavior because that is relevant and appropriate for certain gender, and also schools. So that's another source of social influences. And finally, mass media, that is big things. And if you see the propaganda and advertisement, and you see that as thin, the woman is very beautifully expressed in the pupils, and that's unconsciously the girls realize that the woman has to be more physically attractive to get the attraction. That is the kind of the examples. So these the social sources of influences. It's very important to determine the gender. And also another part of influences of gender is the cognitive behavior, cognitive factors. Two major theories I'm going to introduce to explain the cognitive influences on gender. First theory is a cognitive developmental theory. What they explain that once the people have a concept of a gender of themselves, they start to show the gender typing behavior, meaning that after the boy realized that I'm a boy, they rejected the pink colored dresses because they have a concept of the gender of as a boy. And same things, and picking up certain types of the toys and certain plays. After they realize that their concept of their own gender, they start to show that gender typing behavior. And those, the data support the idea of cognitive developmental, the theory of the gender. And another theory of the cognitive influences is a gender schema. Schema is kind of the framework to organize our data, perceptions, and the information, our experiences in certain way. And a gender schema, it's particularly the experiences relate to the gender. They organize in a certain way. So gender schema organize the world in terms of the female and male, and we have a set up certain expectation based on our own schema. So if we don't have any schema, then probably we cannot differentiate what is a man and what is male things. So cognitive influences, these two theories emphasize that there's a social influences and biological influences, but finally, those influences have influence to establish certain type of a concept of gender and certain type of the schema. And those schema have influence on our gendered behavior. So these three major influences on gender is kind of major explanation of the gender discourse, and you need to understand that. Gender stereotypes, it's, we are not quite aware, even though we had the stereotypes. Stereotypes meaning the general impression and beliefs about the females and males. Oh, females, and they are talkative. Or men, they are easily drinking alcohols. And oh, men's are aggressive. Without any deep thoughts, we just have an impression of that. And it's not actually proved either true or false, but we believe that as a truth without any the validation. So that is the gender stereotypes. Go further, sexism is that based on our stereotypes, we had a certain prejudice and also discrimination against an individual just because of his or her sex. So, for example, the women's can difficult to get promoted. People feel that, oh, women's is more relationship oriented, and probably she cannot contribute to our company. So we are gonna hire the female employees. That is one of our very typical discrimination based on just the sex. So sexism and gender stereotypes, it's kind of one negative stereotypes of the just based on gender, and we needed to be very careful what kind of stereotypes we have and what kind of a sexism maybe we have gone through, or we have behaviors, we do something based on our sexism. Change the topics, going to the gender similarities and differences. And do you think that the men and women are similar, or do you think that the men and women are different? If you feel that there is a similar, then in what aspect and in what ways? This slide shows that the topics. And usually people say those similarities and differences in terms of physical similarities and differences, including height and weight. So people say that usually men, it's more healthier, not healthier, it's more taller than women, and they gain more weight, so they are heavier. So usually physical labor is more fitting for the men, and women don't really do the heavy physical labor job. And that's based on the physical differences among the men. And the research shows that compared to the average, the man is more taller than heavier. And also there's a certain evidence showing the cognitive similarities and differences. We usually say that the man is better in math and a woman is better than man in the verbal skills and writings and English and literatures. So cognitively, certain area, it's a man is better equipped and women are more competent in certain area. And there's a certainty, empirical evidence to prove that those are differences. And also socio-emotional similarities and differences. I'm going to explain more in detail in terms of socio-emotional similarities and differences. But to understand and to interpret of the evidence of physical and cognitive differences between men and women, there's a certain things we need to be very careful in interpretation of the result. See that this is one example of the graph showing that the physical, cognitive differences, particularly in visual spatial skills between men and women. As you see that this is the average differences between men and women. So shows that the average of the man is higher than the average of the female score. So if you compare average score, you can say that man is better than woman in visual spatial skills. But that is the average, the comparison. But you see that this area, this part of the people that belong to this area, it's hard to say that the woman is not good at the visual spatial skills compared to men. So even though the statistics and empirical data shows that compare verbal skills and mathematical skills, compare gender, we needed to be very careful. That is the average comparison. And we needed to know that there is within group differences, and also more people is different from the average score. So when we say the cognitive and physical differences between men and women, that's just the average score. And actual life and in our reality, it's more overlap, and there is a wide range of within groups differences. Third dimension of gender differences and similarities is the social-emotional similarities. Usually we compare aggression, that is the first dimension. Boys are physically aggressive than girls. People usually believe that. But we needed to also understand that what's the definition and what's the criteria of the aggression. Sometimes we can think that relational aggression is a different type of the aggression. It's more related to the interpersonal relationship. It's a manipulation, intentionally isolating somebody from other people's. That type of aggression we more observe among the girls. So even though aggression, we usually say that boys are more aggressive, but depending on what kind of aggression, maybe the girls can be more aggressive. So had to be very careful. And another dimension of social-emotional comparison is a communication in relationship. Here, rapport talk and report talk. And rapport, it's a similar meaning of the intimate relationship. Usually, women's talk can be considered as a rapport talk. So rapport talk meaning is that talking about the emotions and talking about the relations. It's not necessarily there's a certain task, just to talk. To be more friends with and to be more close. So the purpose of the talk is the relationship, and that is rapport talk. And usually that's a female type of the talk communication. And report talk compared to the rapport talk, this is more task-oriented and factual things. So typically men had a conversation about the fact, like what sports team win and the schedule of the games, and also politicians' remark, that kind of the talk, we say that that's a report talk. So usually people say that it's gender differences in communication style. And another dimension of the social-emotional comparison is the pro-social behavior. Usually, the women found that the women are more pro-social and showing care to other people and altruistic behavior, showing the other people compared to the men. And another dimension is the emotion and regulation, how the people can regulate their behaviors. And research shows that men has a difficult to regulate their emotions, especially their anger. But I'm going to explain later why the man has a more difficult to regulate their emotions, especially the anger. And we talking about the gender, that is more kind of socio-cultural things and psychological and biological differences. But that is kind of, we are born as a man and woman. But when we say the masculinity and femininity, that is a personality type. In the past, we believe that well-adjusted man or boy was supposed to be in certain way, like independent or aggressive and powerful. And on the contrary, well-adjusted girl was supposed to be dependent and nurturant and uninterested in power. It's a very stereotypical way of thinking. And also masculine characteristics were considered more healthy and more independent, and it's more easily to get some the power in society. And a woman's is kind of secondary, the class of the people. That is kind of the belief in the past. But in these days, later it's changed. Both males and females became dissatisfied with the burdens. For example, men, sometimes they are very soft and more relationship-oriented, but because of this burden, I cannot show my caring aspect and caring characteristics, and all the time I need to be tough and masculine type of the people. And also at the same time, sometimes women are very aggressive and more, they are easily very powerful and aggressive in certain situations, but they have to hide those aspects. It can be a burden. So I have to realize that the masculine type of and feminine type of, it's not really gender-wise, but it's a more personality types. So Sandra Bam, she developed sex role inventory that is based on personality type. It's not necessarily your gender, but she explained that masculinity type of personality showing that more defend, open belief, and forceful and willing to take a risk and dominant, aggressive. So sometimes women shows that this kind of the masculinity type of personality. Men also have it. And femininity type of personality show this kind of the characteristics. Don't use the harsh languages, it's more affectionate and loving children and understanding and gentle. So this is not gender characteristics, it's more kind of a personality characteristics. When we say that a feminine type of a personality showing this kind of perspective, the characteristics. So if you see that this classification and this criteria is masculinity and high and low, and femininity and low and high. So some people, either man or woman, can have a high masculinity and high level of femininity. We call those type of personality androgynous. It's a very ideal type of personality. And actually androgynous are those personality type long before Carl Jung, psychodynamic psychologist, he proposed that those ideal type of personality. So both masculine and both feminine. And this type of personality is a low masculinity but high femininity. And this type of masculine type but low feminine. And this type is the both low is undifferentiated type of personality. And research find that androgynous people, either man and woman, they a happy life and their level of satisfaction, life satisfaction is higher than other group of the people, and they are very successful in their work and in relationship. So even there is we have some proposed and research is still has conducted about the androgynous type of the personality. Still, traditional gender roles continue to dominate the cultures of many countries in the world today. So we have a burden because I'm a woman. There's a certain way I have to behave and I have a relationship with other people. And because of a man, there's a certain burden to stick to the certain expectation still there. So usually this is the burden that man's duty is to provide for the family, and a woman's duty is to care for the family and household. So even though there is the movement, and especially feminist, the movement against those expectations, but still there is a certain expectation there. But at the same time, there is some movement and there is a trend, changing attitude about the gender roles. Especially, we know that the harms with the sex typing behaviors for both men and women we needed to oppress a certain aspect of our personality because of the the gender role expectation. Start to think that forget about the man and woman, or even that it's masculinity and femininity. A human being is just a human being. So when we understand somebody, it's just based on the personal basis, just to forget about their gender. So we call those trends as a gender role transcendence. So gender should not be the major classification of the human beings. That's another modern trend in these days. In terms of the developmental change and juncture of a gender, especially during the adolescence, the gender intensification hypothesis, what that means is that psychological and behavioral differences between men and women, between boys and girls, become greater during early adolescence. Remember that? Early adolescence, we call that as the puberty. That's the time sexual hormones, the level is changed dramatically and rapidly. So the girls and boys are very self-conscious about their physical differences between men and women, and that's why gender differences are intensified and exaggerated during the adolescence because of that. But this is due to increased socialization pressure also. Because of the physical changes and the mothers and teachers and mass media, they convey certain the messages. Woman should be this way and man should be this way. That is a big socialization process. So in addition to their self-consciousness of the physical changes, the boys and girls in early adolescence, they are very sensitive to the messages from the society, including family and peers and so forth. And that is explained that the gender intensification hypothesis during the adolescence. So this week, we thought about the gender issues, which is one of major topic throughout the history and also all the psychology. In different ways, they're talking about the gender, and we are talking about the gender related to the adolescents, and that's starting to think about the gender, their own identity. Gender is a different concept from the sex, and also start to think about the personality-wise. It's not just the gender issues, but in these days, the trend is that rather than differentiate the people based on gender, more understand individual differences. And also we need to be very careful, not treat the people just based on our stereotypical thinking or sometimes the sexism behavior.